You have a TV?
No. I just like to read the TV guide. Read the TV guide. You don't need a TV.
Television addict! Television addict! Television addict!
Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's Wednesday. It's time for a brand new edition of TV Guidance Counselor. As always, I am Ken Reed. I am your TV Guidance Counselor, and I don't know if to your ears I sound as bad as I sound to my eyes. As you can tell, I have a cold and I'm a little punchy. And if there is a cold medicine company that would like to sponsor the show, please do. I have no sponsors, but I would happily take a cold medicine sponsorship because this year it's just cold after cold. But luckily, I cannot infect you with my germs via audio, and I do sound a little bit underwater. I don't know if I sound that way to you or I'm just trapped in my own head, but my apologies in advance. It won't really matter because you will be so enthralled with the content of today's episode. You won't notice my cold if you have. And you may not have if I didn't point it out to you. I don't know why I do that. But I'm very excited for my guest today. My guest is the one and only Illeana Douglas. She is fantastic. You probably know her as an actor. She's been in some amazing movies and television shows, but she is also an author. She hosts a podcast. She has done a ton of stuff for movie preservation and film history, which we talk about here. Her book, I Blame Dennis Hopper, is 100% indispensable. It is required reading for everybody. If you are remotely interested in the entertainment industry or you just like memoirs, it's really funny and interesting. And so is Illeana. And you will discover that here, as I did when I talked to her. Really love chatting with her, and I cannot thank her enough for taking time out of her busy schedule to sit down and talk with me about old television. If you are listening to the show for the first time because you are a fan of Illeana, again, you have excellent taste. The basic premise of the show here is my name is Ken Reed. I am a stand-up comedian based out of Boston, Massachusetts. That is not a premise. That is just fact. I own more or less every issue of TV Guide up until about the year 2000. Someone picks an old issue, we sit down and we talk about what they'd watched that week. It's a lot of fun, and you will no doubt realize it's a lot of fun by listening to this episode. I have new episodes each and every Wednesday, and today is no exception to that, as it is Wednesday, and this is a new episode. It's perfectly logical. This cold medicine's kicking in. I'm a little punchy, so I'm just going to shut up now and let me do the talking, but not me now, me from an earlier time when I talked to Illeana. Anyway, please sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode of TV Guidance Counselor with my guest, Illeana Douglas.
TV is my friend, and it has been always there for me in time of need.
Illeana Douglas, how are you?
Hi, nice to be here.
Thank you so much for trekking up here into the frozen north of Hollywood, I guess we would call it.
No, burn.
Yeah.
And they say there are no seasons in LA.
It's true. There's summer, and then there's summerish.
Yeah. And and then of course the award. It is award season.
It is award season.
Yes.
That's true. Last time I was here, it was tarantula mating season, and the news was all about it. And they were apparently where people would run up in the hills. The male tarantulas would run across the pathways to like go, and so people were running, and there was like hundreds of tarantulas.
Oh, wow.
So they were like
I missed that.
It was every September.
Sounds
I guess
sounds like a castle film.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
Roger Corman.
Yes. Who was on Good Day LA today? Roger
Oh, he
Corman,
was?
promoting Death Race 2050. All 95 years of them. It was great. I was like,
That's funny. God bless him.
Yeah, I met him in Boston. They had they gave an award to Jonathan Demme,
Mm-hmm.
and Roger Corman presented the award to him. So I got to go and talk to him, which was pretty cool. But I sort of plied you with like
Yes.
some sort of mid 70s ish
love
TV
it.
guides, because I sort of guessed that was when you would be watching the most TV that you had available to you, at least, as
Yes.
you only had CBS.
Yes, well, this is what I was saying, which was so funny. I wrote about this in my book because we didn't have a lot of money. We didn't didn't have an antenna, so we only got CBS. So, while everyone else was debating, what's a better show, The Partridge Family or The Brady Bunch, I was the one going, did anyone see Cannon? My God, he's funny, or,
You were never inclined to be that person to, like, make it up, though, and be like, oh, yeah, no, it was a great episode of Brady, because I know kids who didn't have TV that would just try to pretend they saw it and would always get caught.
No, I would luckily, again, early on, I got into movies, so then movies became my thing, and I would specifically talk about movies, and then, but luckily for me, people did watch All in the Family and Mary Tyler Moore and Bob Newhart, and MASH, and those are all the CBS shows. So I was in good stead then. But I do remember seriously getting into movies that they would play on television. I caught one here, which was the Jason Robards 1,000 Clowns, which I saw for the first time when I was a kid, and it has a kid in it, and I think that's why I liked it so much.
Would you just stumble on these things, or did you said your mother had a subscription to TV Guide at the time, despite only having one channel? I know. I guess it was sort of the thing to have a TV Guide.
I never put that together, but you put that together. That is so funny.
What will I watch? Here are my choices: this or nothing.
Well, and then because you're a kid and you just watch, that's what I was saying. Although I would have loved to have watched American Bandstand, I didn't get it, but I did watch Soul Train.
Yeah, so you got a better education, really. Than you got the.
I know that if I ever want to straighten my hair, I need to get that afro
sheen. Yes, there's that famous, because Soul Train, which is a fascinating story. They used to sell all their own ads, so it was all black products. And there's the one where the Ghost of Frederick Douglass comes out, and it's not a joke. And he's like, "I want to keep my hair natural." And the Ghost of Frederick Douglass goes, "Oh, I'm very familiar with the natural." And it's my favorite ad. It was the '70s Soul Train ad for whatever hair product it was.
Oh my God!
And again, no one that I grew up, because I used to have to get it from a Providence station, because Boston, Crucible of Tolerance, Boston did not air Soul Train, so no one would know what I was talking about if I said I was very familiar with the natural.
That's funny. Well, I started, two reasons I started to get into movies was, my grandfather was the actor Melvyn Douglas, and so I started to be aware that he was in movies. And so watching movies became a way of us communicating more. And then also my Italian grandparents who lived in Queens were really big movie buffs. And I would go to the movies with my grandmother all the time. Right. So when I came home, I think I first saw a Fred Astaire movie with my grandmother. So then when I'd come home, I'd be like, oh yeah, I like Fred Astaire. Right. So you start seeking, things out, and it gave me a leg up to talk to them.
Because that's what was airing on TV then. It was movies from 20 plus years before that, or 30 years ago, because it was cheap. And that was, I always lament the loss of the sort of UHF mentality, where people from our generation and a little bit younger were able to get this education about like the 50 years of Hollywood prior to their existing, just because that's what they had to air. And fill time.
Yeah. And you would discover movies that way. I mean, it wasn't until I was older that I had more of an understanding, but I definitely had my favorites. I loved Lee Marvin. Yeah. So, and they played The Dirty Dozen. It seemed like, again, on rotation on CBS, they played that a lot.
That was like the Sunday afternoon dad's movie. Like, if it's not football season, we'll throw The Dirty Dozen or like Zulu on a Sunday afternoon so dads can watch something.
They would play that. A lot of Martin and Lewis. Yep. I remember the Matt Helm movies, the Dean Martin movies. And they were sort of like kid movies.
They're very candy colored and
that you could,
and like Flint. We're seeing that one on as well.
Yeah, like that was one that what probably went over my head, but I remember it was a big deal when the film, I was in high school, and the film Giant played in 2 nights. And never, and so you'd tune in. Because it was, they would advertise it as like never before seen.
World television premiere. Because people don't understand that you didn't have a video store. You didn't have your phone.
Right.
Pull anything up on. And once a movie was out of the theater, unless it was a big movie that came out, like they would re-release all the time, that was your only chance. Like I remember even a huge movie like The Wizard of Oz, it was a huge deal that every year at Christmas they would air Wizard of Oz. And even if you'd seen it 100 times, it was still a big event.
Definitely. It was definitely an event. I remember another one that used to play a lot that had a profound effect on me, because I remember seeing it. One of my like earliest sort of seeing a piece of it was Phantom of the Opera, the Claude Raines version.
Yep.
And again, we didn't have color television. When I grew up, and I was like, oh my God, and in color.
It's in color?
It's twice as scary in color.
Yeah.
But that movie had a profound effect on me, like really scared me, that when the scene when he was there chasing him and he's in the sewers.
Yeah.
It just, when you're a kid and everything is, you really feel like it's real, and you know.
Oh yeah. I mean, especially with television where they don't, it's the same thing your parents watch the news on. And so you're watching the news 1 hour and then you're watching Claude Raines in a mask terrorizing people the next hour. And when you're little, there's kind of not a big difference between those two things. You kind of, this is what this shows me.
Yeah.
And this was in Connecticut?
This was in Connecticut. Yeah.
Were you aware? Well, obviously, if you're visiting your parents, like you're aware, your grandparents are aware of the proximity to New York. But were you like, they're making these things down there, or like some of the game shows or anything like that?
No, I didn't really have that understanding, because again, we were in this rural. It was like, and plus we were growing up. My dad had this commune, and so that they didn't have any television at all. So it was more music centric, like listening to music, and he was a little off TV. So of course, therefore, when I'd go to visit my grandparents, it was like I was literally glued to the television. But I was binging on like things that they watched.
Lawrence Welk.
Yeah, Lawrence Welk, The Untouchables, Mets baseball. All the things that my grandfather would do, even like fights. Because I would like to be with him when they were watching television. It was such a great thing, because at home, as I said, saying we only had one channel. But I'm trying to think, as I visited, the year that I understood that movies again were being made was, I remember opening up the New York Post. I was at my grandmother's house, and there was Al Pacino, and they were making Dog Day Afternoon, and there was a photograph of him like on the set, and it was like you could just go there.
You could just take the train and just go there.
Yeah.
Just see it happen. Yeah.
And so I convinced my grandmother, like, can we go and like watch them film? And it just seemed like, again, the most exciting,
Oh yeah. I mean, we, in Boston in the mid 80s, we had Spencer for Hire, and that was the show they were filming there. And so any opportunity I had to go see them chase people and shoot people, I would go watch them film Spencer for Hire. And the movie Second Sight, which John Larroquette shot in 87, and that was a big deal. And then we had nothing for like 20 years.
Yeah.
But I couldn't believe they were filming something so close that then I could watch on television. Everybody else saw it too. It was, that blew my tiny mind.
Me too. So I had the Al Pacino experience. I had enough. It sounds like fun, because I think it was a TV movie. We're in TV. I actually saw Lucille Ball shoot a scene. What was it called? Stone Pillow,
where she's the homeless person.
Yes.
And it's terrifying. Lucille Ball too. It's the I'm homeless one. Yeah.
And they shot that in New York.
Yep.
And I watched that. Like a little piece of that, like kind of being filmed. And then I had an Italian cousin who worked in props.
Okay.
That, they worked on, certain movie set. And then I had my big experience, of course, then when I visited my grandfather and was on the set of Being There. And then that just blew my mind.
Yeah. That was down in Maryland? Was it down in
That was
Virginia?
down in Asheville, North Carolina.
Okay. Yeah.
That just was like crazy,
How old were you? You were a teenager still when you went there?
I was about, I think I was like 13. But that was surreal. So I was just at the stage where I was like, my bedroom wall became like, pictures, for magazines of all these people and movie posters and record cutouts and then, the collage of faces, and then how, that became, okay, a director makes a movie, this understanding of that was even different than being a part of a crowd, like, because I was just there to see it, like Al Pacino or Lucille Ball, but like this was like, wow, there's this whole secret world I don't know about. and they're making something, and I somehow have to be a part of it.
Right, because when you're just seeing the Lucille Ball thing, it's almost like they're filming a news story or something. They're just pointing the camera.
I couldn't get anywhere.
You never
near
know
it.
anyway. Yeah.
We were in like a crowd.
Yeah,
Of,
I see the red hair.
Yeah.
But yeah, being there, I imagine you were there for a pretty good amount of time while they were filming.
No, I
a few
was
days,
only.
or-
We was only there for a couple days, and I
Yeah.
went to watch them film for like one day. But it was just seared in my mind. It was so memorable.
Didn't you get to meet Peter Sellers?
Get to meet Peter Sellers and Jack Warden, and they put me on a little chair next to Hal Ashby,
Right.
which was then surreal because, of course, then growing up and becoming such a movie lover and seeing it from a different perspective and seeing like, wow, I sat next to that guy.
I was being there for being there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I love all of his movies, like
Yeah.
that. I was like, oh, wish I knew to ask him questions.
Right,
Now
right.
and that movie has always been like kind of a good luck charm for me in terms of places I've gone. It always seems to come up, or I've met
Right.
people that worked on the movie.
But that movie specifically is such a TV centric movie.
Yeah.
Because you have the commentary on Peter Sellers' character only knowing things from television.
Right.
And it's the first movie I can think of that was, well, maybe Another Face in the Crowd, but that was sort of very critical of a generation raised on television.
Yeah, very much so. But then, from my perspective, when we were talking about like, oh, I watched them do that scene.
Right.
And I mean, imagine me to this day.
Right.
Like I go that, they gave my grandfather as a gift one of the large, beautiful televisions.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's the one maybe that's even in Peter Sellers' bedroom.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a beige sort of, looks like Bauhaus.
Yep.
Well, that was in my grandfather's living room.
That's amazing because there's a famous still of him sitting on the bed watching that TV.
Yes.
Wow.
So again, it's like, oh God, it's like an out of body experience, you know, seeing that or seeing something my grandfather wore in that movie, or the scene that I watched, which was Jack Warden, where Jack Warden comes and they are practicing shaking his hand.
Right.
And just, it's surreal the way I remember what the day was like, and it was cold and it was rainy, and driving to the set and the hotel we stayed at, and so all those things, like I get, for a long time I actually couldn't see the movie. It reminded me so much of my grandfather.
Right. You can't be separated from it enough to actually watch the movie part of it.
Yeah, it would just make me really sad because I'd say, oh my God, there he is in his blue bathrobe and his blue pajamas. And that's just what he looked like.
Right.
And that's just what he would wear. And,
Right.
all those things. I sometimes I do the same thing if I'm in a movie too. I'm like, I can't look at the movie. It's like
It reminds you too much of the time or what you were shooting or something like that.
it's like home movies,
Yeah.
because nobody's, you don't want to bore someone like, when we were shooting this scene, this happened.
I remember that day I got a flat tire. And
Yeah.
But is there a movie that you've done that you're almost mad that you're in because it's harder to enjoy it the way other people do, or do you just get taken out that little bit?
Yeah. Well, it's hard. I mean, I don't watch movies that I'm in, which is when I'm working on movies, or when I was, directing the web series. Of course, I'd look at myself endlessly with the editing room and things like that.
You have to, though.
Yeah. And I would always really, really enjoy it. But yeah, watching a movie is always like, I don't know, it just makes me a little sad, a little reflective, I guess.
Right.
But I'm trying to think. Well, even a movie like Stir of Echoes, which is a really scary movie,
I love that
it
movie.
still scared me.
Yeah. Well, you sort of have the luxury of being not in the scary scenes. Like you kind of set up the stuff, and then you can kind of enjoy.
Well, I watched the film, but again, there's a huge jump scene in the movie, and I watched them film it. I literally watched them film it, and I still jumped
Still
and
makes
got
you jump.
scared.
Well, then we were talking before we recorded. We were talking about Trilogy of Terror, and that movie was written by the same guy that wrote Stir of Echoes, Richard Matheson.
Yes,
who wrote most of the Twilight Zone.
He was amazing.
Oh, that's some of my absolutely favorite things.
Yeah, we got to meet him too.
Did you really? That was the last movie that probably was adapted from one of his works.
Yeah,
came with the big beard and his Hemingway-ish.
Like a big lumberjack.
I mean, he to me was one of the sort of absolute architects of 21st or 20th century pop culture, especially through television.
Yeah.
He wrote almost as many as Rod Serling, and the ones that people remember.
I know.
That
he did.
Because I always think that the Twilight Zone made a generation of people better people.
Definitely.
In a lot of ways.
Well, the writing on the Twilight Zone and, getting back to TV, and again, that was in New York and Channel 11.
Right,
That
PIX.
that would have been a show that I watched, religiously. I was just obsessed watching that show.
Well, it's so cinematic, too, and you would
Yeah.
see movie stars in it. And
Well, I think that as a kid, you understand the little moral lessons of them. Like when I see them now as a grown up, you're like, all right, I get it.
a little heavy-handed. Yeah.
Or it's going to end us. And,
Yeah.
But like when you were a kid, you'd but they were amazing. They're really fun to watch, and that's something we didn't get in Connecticut.
Right.
We didn't get that, and I don't think, and we didn't get Star Trek either.
Right, because that would have been on, I think it was an ABC show, and then on syndication it would have been a UHF station, which you're not getting if you're only getting one channel, which would be CBS. And you were saying you'd have to sort of plan a sleepover to watch Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, that was a huge deal. And I remember my friend, and I'd have to navigate and negotiate a sleepover at his house because girls weren't into Saturday Night Live. That was always like a boys thing.
Yeah, that makes sense weirdly. I guess maybe it was just gross outy humor, or I don't know what.
I don't know. I mean, to me, they did musical things. And Chevy Chase, and then I transitioned from watching him on the show to his movies, and I love Foul Play. I thought that was it was a great kids movie.
I even like Modern Problems, which is such a weird movie.
Yeah,
Nell Carter's so good in it.
Yeah,
it's bizarre. I always used to get that and Seems Like Old Times confused because they used to air them on TV all the time.
Yeah, they do. They all sort of meld into then Dudley Moore too, and he's in Foul Play.
Yeah.
Then he goes off and does 10.
Yeah. I feel like Charles Grodin's just in everything at
He
some
was in
point.
everything.
Yeah, for a 10-year period.
Yeah.
Just throw Charles Grodin in it.
Charles Grodin, well, I always joke about it. Richard Dreyfuss was in every movie I saw.
Yep.
And George Segal seemed to be in. And Jane Fonda, I think, too.
Yeah.
She was in everything.
Clute? She in Clute?
Clute was something I would have seen on television for the first time.
With everything cut out.
Exactly. Like Bonnie and Clyde. I was like, why is this such a good movie?
Yeah.
And then you see it years later. It was like, oh my God.
Was there ever a movie you saw on television that was a favorite and you would see it every time, and then when you finally actually saw it, you were kind of like, I don't know if I like this as much, or it's almost like a totally different movie?
I feel like it was actually the opposite because, again, seeing pieces of Phantom of the Opera.
Right.
And then as a grown-up, seeing it on the big screen.
Yeah.
I had this opportunity. I was like, okay, I could see why as a kid I really was into this movie.
Yeah.
1,000 Clowns still holds up for me, like something that I saw as a kid. I've never seen The Dirty Dozen on a big screen.
I never have either, actually. I bet that's
I've seen it probably, 20 times on television. But here's an interesting thing. Seeing Dirty Dozen on television led me to see The Big Red One.
Yeah.
With Lee Marvin and Mark Hamill. Because it was he's in Star Wars.
Yeah.
And again, years later, putting it together that's Sam Fuller.
Yeah.
And that's why that was an amazing movie.
I love Sam Fuller. He is so underrated, I think, from Worcester, Mass.
Yeah.
And he's just disturbing, like Shock Corridor.
Oh, God, that's so scary.
Did you ever see Return to Salem's Lot that he acts in?
No.
He plays a vampire hunting Nazi killer. And it's Sam Fuller with a big cigar and a Luger. And he's like, I killed these Nazi bastards. And they're just letting Sam Fuller go nuts in this movie. And it's Larry Cohen directed it. And it's a completely crazy movie. It's the only time I've ever seen Sam Fuller act in anything.
Wow.
And it's pretty amazing. And I love his book, his autobiography. Unbelievable. But yeah, once I started figuring out, and it sounds like you did this too, who made these movies, because it was hard to find out. You'd have to I had a notebook and I'd be like, oh, that's the director.
Yeah.
Just couldn't look it up. You could maybe go to the library and get those big volumes of yearbooks of movies or something. But
well, I had my book, Life Goes to the Movies.
Okay.
And I had I would have the photo. I'd leaf through the book. And so if there was a photograph of like Jack Lemmon, I'd be like, okay, I've identified Jack Lemmon, and he's really upset in the photo. And then the movie would be Days of Wine and Roses.
Right.
As I would get older, I was like, oh, okay.
That's one I have to see.
Yeah, like so that became my guide. Like I remember the terrible image of, Sophia Loren and two women.
Yeah.
And so you'd leaf through the book. And I was like, okay, that looks really scary. Or Seconds.
Yeah. Oh, Seconds. Amazing. John Frankenheimer is Seconds.
For years, all I had was the photograph.
With the bandages?
Yeah. All I had the photograph was of Rock Hudson when he's screaming, and you have no idea what the movie is.
Yeah. And you almost don't want to know. Like some of them are so terrifying. You're like,
now, I mean, I'm like,
well, yeah, that would be absolutely.
As a kid, I was leafing. I'm leafing through that. And then the first I was really into the Marx Brothers. When I was a kid, and you could watch the Marx Brothers on television.
Yeah, they would be on like Saturday and Sunday morning. They would show a ton of Marx Brothers stuff and Little Rascals, and then. But
then that transitioned me again to with my grandparents watching You Bet Your Life, as if it were a current show.
Right.
Better. Right. And I would be like, I was crazy for you, and that was again Channel 11.
That show was, I guess it probably added the fact that you only had a black and white TV, so when everything's black and white. It is kind of hard to tell when stuff is from.
Yeah.
Because even new stuff, I mean, if you're watching Charlie's Angels, it's going to kind of look the same as a Marx Brothers movie in black and white in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And yet You Bet Your Life was one of those shows where I really was drawn as someone who liked comedy to sort of anarchy. And that show was complete, like you had no idea what he was going to say or do.
Yeah.
But you knew what he was doing. But like that, when I was lucky enough to see like Ernie Kovacs stuff and that kind of stuff later, I was like, what is happening?
Ernie Kovacs I discovered because of Chevy Chase.
Right.
Because because then if you like someone, again, we had such limited, like you said, there was no internet.
Right.
So if Chevy Chase says, oh, he's really influenced by Ernie Kovacs, and you're like, okay, I guess I got to find Ernie.
I need to find it.
Yeah, I got to find Ernie Kovacs.
I remember there was a made-for-TV movie about Ernie Kovacs with Jeff Goldblum playing him.
I remember that.
That's where I heard of Ernie Kovacs. and I went out and I bought, I think it wasn't his autobiography, but I think it was his wife's autobiography, like the first one, because that was the only thing you could do is if you could get an autobiography that might have a filmography in it or something,
right.
Or sometimes it would have like a transcription
yeah.
of a show that was on. You could read the script. That was like the best you could do. It was like getting sheet music for a song. But was there a time when you first moved to New York that you realized you had more access to all the things that you had wanted to see as a kid, or you were just like, wow, I can binge on all these things, or I can find them, or there's great theaters? Or
well, it was interesting when I was a kid. I moved out of the house to do theater. When I was relatively young, I was like 16, and I got a job in Hartford.
Oh yeah, and that was a dinner theater type thing, I think.
Well, that was actually before. This was when I worked at the Hartford Stage Company Youth Theater, and I had to move to Hartford, and I had roommates, and they had cable.
Right.
Which was like, we didn't have. Yeah. We still didn't have cable. I'm curious. I'm like, when did my mom get cable?
And you went from one channel to 100 channels. There was no.
Well, so they had cable, and then that became. I religiously watched David Letterman.
Yep.
And that was when he had his morning show, and except when we were working, but we would watch David Letterman. That became a big deal, and MTV was starting. And as I recall, the movie that seemed to be on continuously on Cinemax was The Tin Drum. It seemed to be on, like...
Tin Drum was on a lot.
They're playing The Tin Drum again.
Yep.
And you'd watch it again just because it was a luxury to watch something. Then when I moved to New York, I weirdly got into, like, I was staying with relatives. So again, I didn't really have TV. And then with roommates, and we'd have to again navigate. It wasn't finally until I got the right roommate,
right.
Like, okay, we've got enough money. We can have,
this is the essential.
Yeah, we can have cable and the television and VCR, and then the VCR changed everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
then it became you could go to the library or you could go to Lincoln Center, or where I was obsessed with was going to the Museum of Broadcasting, which had just opened in New York. And we got a yearly membership, which I believe was $50, which for us would probably have been a lot of money.
Yeah.
And my roommate and I, we'd go, this is when I was at acting school at the Neighborhood Playhouse, and we'd go from school to the Museum of Broadcast. And at that point, there was no one there, you know?
Right.
Just
you have to
us.
fill out the form and sign out, like, because you couldn't take it. I guess the way I would describe it to people is it would be like if YouTube was a place. Like you kind of had to go there and watch it.
Yeah, you'd go to a booth and then it'd be in a screen in front of you, and you'd get your headphones, you know. But we watched all the live television, like James Dean, you know, we'd start with all of that. But that's what we were really interested in watching, you know, Geraldine Page, anyone that had done any kind of, and then Lincoln Center, you could get out the Broadway shows.
Wow. That's pretty
or
cool.
musicals. So you could see Sondheim's Company or, you know, revival of this. And, but yeah, the VCR or in the local, you know, sort of video store, you could rent things. But I remember another huge turning point, which I think was like the early 90s, where a friend of mine, a gay guy, was like, you got to see this movie. And it was like, there was literally only one VHS and everybody was passing it around. And the movie was Grey Gardens.
Right.
And it was like an underground gay film.
Yeah.
That was who was watching it. And you know, and that's how you heard about movies, by passing them
tape
around.
trading was huge. I mean, I remember when I was in high school, I would tape trade, and that's how I saw like a ton of British television and just movies, you know, foreign movies you could just you'd only ever heard of. And I'm a huge horror nerd, so it was mostly like Dario Argento movie, you know, like all these stuff like that just never would come out here. But it was a safer way to see them, because I remember as a kid, if I wanted to see those movies, I remember we had to see Day of the Dead, the George Romero movie, and we had to go into the Combat Zone in Boston, and it was the only place showing it. It was not a place for a child, but it was like, now I can just bring this home. And, you know, even though I remember the thing I always reference is I had to take two buses and a train to rent a Racerhead, because the Brookline Video Smith was the only store that had it. So it was like a whole day to go get it, go home and watch it, and then a whole day to bring it back.
Well, right, and the idea that you would have to bring the movie back, you know, I remember, you know, like King of Comedy was like that, you know. Then the idea that when lasers came in and you could actually buy a movie, like that just was crazy.
Which the studios were not happy about, which is why they were so expensive, because they were like, wait, this is we're giving away our property. It's crazy. I remember After Hours was another one that I think was right after King of Comedy that I was the first movie I bought.
Right. It made its way around.
And that was a movie that I was like, you got to see. Like, I can't even explain to you what this is, because it was such a sort of under the radar movie. And I was like, people were like, I didn't know there wasn't. It was like, you have to, like, I bought a copy so that you can watch this movie. It's just crazy.
I used to, and I had Albert Brooks's Real Life too. That was like a must see.
Yeah, it still is, and it's weird. That movie,
I think it's hard to see.
It's on DVD now.
Oh, it is.
But I think it might be out of print. But it's not streaming or anything. And Lost in America is much easier to find, which is probably maybe my second favorite Albert Brooks movie. But I had Penelope Spheris on the show when we were talking about Real Life, because she produced that movie. She produced all of his shorts on SNL, and we're just talking about how bizarre it was that movie. When I've talk to people who've shown it to younger people, they don't see the satire in it, because it's this exaggerated, it was completely silly, but you watch it now and they're like, whoa, what's the big deal? Isn't this what we do? It's like, no, you shouldn't think that's terrible. And that's a weird thing when I try to show people movies that had like a huge impact on me growing up, that are seeing it now as an adult.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
Well,
that's always hard, because if you have little movies that are near and dear to you, you know, you gotta be really careful when you screen them, you know.
Repo Man's another one that like changed my life when I saw it and was hard to see. And I was like, if you want to understand me, just watch Repo Man. And then there are people who are like, I hated that movie. And I'm like, no, how could you hate it?
But
this will seem like a stupid statement, but people tend to have a less personal relationship with movies these days. Or there's not like, and this might just be that, and sorry to lump you in with me, but we seem like the kind of people who have this real affinity for certain movies are like, you could write your autobiography just by naming 3 movies that someone would watch and they would kind of like get you.
Yeah.
But I feel like people don't have that connection quite as much anymore. And I wonder if it's because they're not stumbling on movies as much, and because they have access. When we would watch a movie, you would make sure you soaked in every second of it.
Yeah.
And you would stick with the movie. So,
well, I wonder if it's because all of our early movie-going experiences were really in a theater, which maybe we don't have. And again, it's the person. I mean, I always, I do a movie podcast.
Yes,
and I always ask people, like, what's the first movie you saw and who took you to it?
Right.
And that always is like this amazing story, because it's usually some relative that really likes movies, or there's some interesting nostalgic tie to your first movie and seeing a movie and how special it was. Like even in school, like it'd be like a rain day and they were going to show a movie.
We're watching Puff the Magic Dragon?
Yeah, it was like a huge...
Which is funny because my wife is from England, and whenever I tell her about that stuff, like, day before vacation, we wouldn't do anything. They'd do us a word jumble and we'd watch Herbie. And I'm like, what? That's school. You're not supposed to, they're supposed to be teaching you. What are you doing?
Well, even with, in our day when they'd show you the drug movies.
Yes.
That was like a big, it was
absolutely.
And the teacher would leave the room. I was like, again, as I think of it as a grown up, I'm like, great. Be traumatized without a grown up in the room.
Nobody there.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to?
He'd put it on. You're going to watch this film now, and if anyone is disturbed, I'll be outside.
I'm going to be outside smoking.
I'll be outside smoking.
They do that with our sex ed movie, which I actually talk about on my albums, where it was, I think we're in 5th grade, and for a lot of kids, this was the first time we've heard any of this stuff.
Oh,
and they have no preamble, nothing.
I
and
know.
it's this thing from like the early 70s, and it opens with, there's all these, they had a one for girls and one for boys. They separated us by gender.
Yes.
And then they swapped the movies after. And they had, no teacher in there. And it opens with these kids in a locker room, and one of them's reading this giant, really badly made prop book that says Great Moments in Sex. Like really bad, clearly not a real book. And this is the first line in the movie, the official movie that the school board is showing us is, says here a guy got a boner 3 feet long and 8 people sat on it. Then it broke off. And it was, and it was
and you're like,
we're like, whoa, what?
What's happening?
And it was I think the point, then the coach comes in, he's like, guys, that's not true. But none of us heard that part because we're all like, what? What's happening?
I know.
And I was like, this should not be. This should not be.
And did you tell your parents? Because I didn't tell my
No, I was mortified to share that with them.
I wouldn't. I remember being traumatized by the one girl for religious reasons wasn't going to watch the movie.
Yeah. Because you felt like, should I not be watching?
I was like, well, what's up with Wanda?
Yeah.
Like, and her family. And then, like, it's okay for me.
Yeah.
But, like, her mother is determined that she shouldn't even be seeing this film.
What's going to happen to me when I watch it or something? Yeah, all that stuff was so...
like, we'd see her later in the bar. I was like, well, I guess we can't.
Yeah, don't mention it to her.
Talk about that traumatizing...
She might just turn into vapor, and if we mention watching it.
Well, I can tell you in the girls' version, because I didn't see the guys, but the girls' version is like, it made no sense. The girl gets her period, and then at the end, her mother buys her a new dress.
Oh, perfect. So you get a new dress every month.
It was like, again, like, values.
All I remember is in the girl when we watched, they really emphasized that she shouldn't go swimming. It was like over and over again. It was like, don't get a chill and don't go swimming. I was like, I don't understand. That's all I've taken from this is that sometimes girls can't go swimming. I don't understand.
Did you see the Sonny and Cher one about drugs?
Yes,
yeah, that was
Sonny's
terrifying.
Totally hammered.
Yeah.
I have a
terrifying.
I loved those and I collected those for years. And there's one an LSD film strip where the girl's eating the hot dog. Have you seen that one? And it turns into a treasure troll doll.
Yeah, that's what they put. And again, like with the teacher leaving the room.
Yeah. And if you did have questions, they would not have answers. They would be like, well, there's a handout, a mimeograph handout.
We didn't even have the handout. As I recall, they were just like, all right, I did. Okay, show that.
Did you have any? We had this program Dare, which Dare to Keep Kids Off Drugs, and
Yes.
we had a DARE officer come in.
Yeah,
and we were
I
maybe
remember that.
third grade, and this guy came in and he literally had a suitcase filled with every drug on earth that they had confiscated. And he opens his suitcase and he's, does anyone know what these are? And he's going through telling us what all the drugs do, and it was terrifying. And there was, this person did LSD and thought they were an orange and peeled themselves. And but then he pulls out, he has a jar of peanut butter in there, like natural peanut butter. And he's like, he opens it up and it's got the oil on the top, and he's like, you know what this is? And we're like, it's peanut butter. He goes, people will take this oil, they'll put it in a needle, inject it into them, and they die. And we were like, well, no, first of all, no one in this room had ever even heard of that.
Yeah.
Like, what? That was the thing he emphasized the most, was don't do that. And I've never heard of that before or after that was a thing. I was like, this man was trained to come teach us not to put peanut butter oil in a syringe.
Well, those are those things, of course, that, we're talking about, like, why then Albert Brooks is funny.
Right.
Because, like, when he made those videos, about going to comedy school.
Right.
And we all had the same context in a way. We all sort of thought the same things, were funny. And again, with kids today, where they've seen everything, it is harder to say what a joke is, or what a well-constructed joke is.
There's not that sort of shared experience as well. Like, I remember if there was people you ran into and they'd seen a certain TV show or a movie that you had seen, you're like, oh, we're friends now. Like, like that's a thing that we have in common that most people don't.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that would be now. When you were living in New York, did you ever go to any tapings? Like, did you try to go to SNL or anything like that when you were down there?
No, I never did. I embarrassingly, when I was in school, did write like a bunch of jokes
for Weekend Update.
Oh yeah,
yeah. We've all done that.
Just horrifying. Like sat by the television, pretty sure they used my sketch.
Yep.
Or
totally going to be on
some
there.
part of it. Think that's what I sent them.
Yep. Can't not prove it.
And I think on yellow pad paper.
Of course.
Not even typed, scribbled, like, they should have a collection of all the
rejected things.
Geeky kids that,
One of the things I wanted to
like
do, there's a show called Zoom that was on PBS.
Yes,
it's huge.
I remember
People
that.
loved it. And it was made in Boston for GBH. And a ton of people that I've talked to on this show sent in, because what Zoom used to do is kids would send in stories and then they would act them out on the show. They would do
right,
sketch.
yeah, I kind of remember that.
A ton of people that I don't know of note wrote in stories to Zoom that never got on the air. And I checked with a friend who works at GBH, and they're like, oh yeah, we have all the things that everyone ever wrote to Zoom. And I'm like, it'd be so great to pull, like, this person's a famous director now.
Yeah.
Let's do his Zoom story from 1972. Because they just have just bags and bags and bags of mail of these people that wrote in things like that.
Oh, I love that
is
idea.
great.
Well, when I got to New York, I actually tried to get on the television show Jeopardy,
Right.
which had just come back, and did the test.
Yeah.
Went and did the test, and I flunked out. And then, again, my roommate, like, he went ahead, and then later on I made fun of him because he got rejected because they said he was too aggressive. So he didn't even make it to the air.
My uncle, I think he might have the unofficial record for the most times beating the test but not getting on the show, because he looks a little like the Unabomber.
hard.
Oh yeah, and he's a super smart guy.
Yeah.
But just not a person you would put on television. And so he would go and just kill in this test and they're like, please stop coming. Like, we know that you could do well on the show, but it's also a TV show. Yeah. So the poor guy, he's never going to make it. What was the first person that you were like kind of starstruck by that you remember watching, if you can even think of it,
Like,
that you got to work with? Or
I mean, it's my whole life. It's
Yeah.
like, I'm still like,
oh yeah, I mean, I remember seeing you do the reading, and you're talking about like when you're in the hotel room with Marlon Brando.
yeah, I mean, that was insane. I was like, can we flash back to my room and my bedroom, and with the poster of you on your motorcycle and acting school, and it all starts to flash. I mean, the first time I was on David Letterman, I mean, again, like, I thought I can't make my legs move. You know, it
Right.
just seems surreal because as a kid, you've practiced so many times being on the David Letterman show
Yeah.
and you've watched it and you stayed home from school and like I'm walking out and like I'm looking at David Letterman but those are kind of fun moments too,
Right.
you know, where you're like, do I look nervous? Like, 'cause
Right. Can everyone tell? Yeah.
Can everyone tell? Like he's like waiting for me to talk and I'm like, you just want to go,
I'm actually here. Yeah, those sort of through the looking glass moments are always and like whenever we come out here to visit, it's nonstop with that stuff. And I'm like, living under, just never get over it in the best way.
Yeah.
Because, you know, growing up just outside of Boston with nothing. And I used to write letters to people all the time. And then you go out and you're like, oh, that's the thing from the movie. And this is that person. And,
yeah.
I don't know how people aren't constantly starstruck.
I am. I had an experience recently. The first autograph I ever got was of Dick Cavett.
Oh, nice.
He was in, this was when I was in Hartford doing the theater. And I'm not sure, he must have been promoting his book or doing something. But anyway, he was in Hartford and he was in a mall. You know, there was like a Hartford mall. And I don't remember much about it except that I thought he would be impressed if I brought not his book, but my book on the Marx Brothers.
Right.
Because there's a picture of him, him and Groucho. And I was like, had my book for him to sign and he signed it. And he did say like, well, why don't you have my book? I was like, well, I have your book at home. But I
wanted to impress you. I don't know.
And we had a little conversation or whatever. And he was very nice to me. And then cut to, November 2016. And I am interviewing Dick Cavett. And I brought the book that he signed when I was a little kid. And I was kind of like, and he's so smart. And he's like, so I was like, this is surreal.
He would be intimidating even if he wasn't a famous person. Like he's just that intellectual, intimidating person.
Yes, he lapses into French. He's one of those people that is talking and he says, chanté.
But then it would be like a really funny joke too. And you're like, I can't keep up with this.
Yes, or the Latin translation is, or he says, I was talking to Alan, and I'm in my head, I'm like, I'm pretty sure he means Woody Allen. And he's met everyone, and then his shows, of course, meant so much to me, and so that was like a great moment of getting to.
Bookends, kind of.
Talk to him. I had the same book. I was like, he signed underneath it, And he was really a good sport about it, which I think is, it's always nice when people are a good sport about your obsession of them. I think if you're really like a fan in the sense of it's not just like, oh my God, and they're great and they just want a picture. It's, I think it's telling them that you actually had a unique experience, which he had these unique experiences when he was a kid with Bob Hope.
Right.
You know, like where he would do the same thing. He was like, well, Bob Hope came to, Omaha, Nebraska, and he like, how you doing, kid?
Yeah. My life has changed. Yeah. It's funny when you can tell the people who are true fans of the work that they're doing, and then the people are just like, this is my job, whatever.
Right.
But they almost all have that story where someone went out of their way and didn't have to be nice to them and was. Yeah. And, that they'll always do that. I remember I did a show at a college with Patton Oswalt, and Patton's very, very nice, as everyone knows. And after the show, there was like 200 kids waiting for him. And he stood there and he talked to every single one, and they asked him questions I know he's been asked 1,000 times.
Right.
And he answered everyone like it was the first time and was super nice. And I'm like, that is such a skill set. That is unnatural. Yeah. And, but I've encountered that's more the case than not, which is always nice. My first autograph I ever got, and one of the only ones I ever got, was Sid Caesar, and I was 2 years old.
I have this autograph,
and everyone should. But I forgot about this. My dad was cleaning out like a storage locker or something, and he's like, "I got the Sid Caesar autograph here." And I was like, "What's Sid Caesar?" He's like, "Yeah, when you were 2, you somehow found out he was doing dinner theater in Framingham and begged us to take you to meet him. Because I guess I used to watch your show of shows in
Yeah.
Mad Men World. And so I went and he signed this thing to me and I got my picture with him. And now I'm just like a 2-year-old being like, I really got to go see Sid Caesar.
Wow,
So I have it
that's
up in a frame. But that weird thing, I don't know who. I remember also met why am I blanking on her name? Oh my, Jane Curtin.
Right.
Because she was back home promoting like Keaton.
Oh, surreal! I worked with Jane Curtin, and I've worked and become friends with Lorraine Newman. And again, like they were a poster on my wall.
Yeah.
And it's always you have a hard time, or Richard Dreyfuss, who I've become very close to. These people. Richard Dreyfuss cried when he read the chapter. Like he just said it made him just feel so full.
Right.
That it's the way that he said he felt about when he watched Jimmy Stewart.
Wow.
And then grew up and was an actor and was like presenting an award, and somehow he's meeting Jimmy Stewart. He has the chance to say to Jimmy Stewart like what he meant to me, and I think things like that are really, if you can phrase them in maybe the right way. Sometimes writing it is better than. Because
you tend to get
it gushes out.
Yeah.
I did gush out, again when I was in New York and I saw Lee Marvin. And
right.
You're in the first movie, and it was like poor Lee, hung over walking up Madison Avenue. But like he did, I did get to meet him.
Yeah.
And that was his famous utterance to me. He said, "Young lady, if you have half as much energy on stage as you do in real life, you ought to do just fine."
It was so weird seeing him in things like he was on that show Master Ninja with one of the Van Pattens around that time, probably. Or seeing him be like on a TV show after knowing him as a movie star back when you did one or the other. You never saw movie stars on TV in a show.
No.
It was like you couldn't do both. Do whatever. So it was always, he was one of the first guys I remember being like, wow, Lee Marvin's in a TV show? It's really weird.
Yeah. But I was into Lee Marvin because he also, like Peter Sellers, he was into the occult.
Right.
And that was like in one of my, magazines that I'd sent away for.
Right. Those Hollywood
Fate.
Rumor magazines.
Well, like there was one, Supernatural.
Yeah.
And, while my friends were reading Tiger Beat, I'm like, into the Fate, Supernatural.
Yeah. He met Anton LaVey once. So that kind of thing. Yeah. I remember reading Jackie Gleason's UFO obsession was something that I was like, man, this is crazy.
Wow.
And he had that, he had a famous library. Have you ever heard that story? Jackie Gleason apparently had this enormous library about all occult and supernatural that he donated to this library. And they have a Jackie Gleason occult wing.
Wow.
And I had Teresa Genzel on the show, who was in The Toy with him. And she said that he didn't stay in the hotel with everybody. And she was like, it must be because it's Jackie Gleason. But it was because the hotel they were in wasn't high enough. And he would always stay in the penthouse because he would UFO watch all night with a telescope and just wait for UFOs.
Yeah.
And like that kind of stuff. Yeah, I can't get enough of that kind of thing. It's so bizarre.
I know. It's surreal because you don't want to upset people, too, with their...
Yeah, like so much about their personal life. Or it's weird, too, because you're in a sense, you're overly familiar with the person that you never met.
Right.
And they have no idea who you are. And so it's weird because you don't know what's...
It's weird for me when I'm acting in a scene with them, too. I'm like, when I was a kid.
Yeah, now I have to pretend.
Do you remember when you were in Central Park with your dog, Mr. Pacino?
Yeah.
Remember Lucky, the dog?
Yeah. I saw you just walking. You remember me being there, right?
Remember you stopped and then you played ball with us for a while, remember?
Of course, it was a very memorable moment.
You want to freak someone out,
Yeah.
George Segal... He'd call me. He says, my biographer is here.
Yeah.
Because the first day it's like, okay. Like, first day it's like so flat. I remember George, who I had met when we did To Die For, but then I was doing a television show called The Single Guy.
Oh, yeah. Jonathan Silverman.
And he was on Just Shoot Me. So I saw him in the cafeteria.
Right.
And it turns out, he said, we have something in common. I inherited your grandfather's secretary, Nan Stevens.
Weird.
I was like, Nan, okay. So we were chatting and, day one, hey, can I ask you about Where's Pop Up?
Yeah.
Oh, well, Illeana, by day 3, Illeana, please, let's.
That's
I
enough.
don't. Are we gonna? Let's just eat lunch today, okay? Let's. And then it was funny. Like a few months later, we happened to be at a same film festival, and he goes, my biographer.
Right.
Ask her.
Yeah.
She knows more than
She'll
I
know
do.
the answer. Tom Wilson, who's Biff in Back to the Future, he does something that I love. And whenever someone opens for him, or they're doing a couple days worth of shows, and at first time I heard it, I was like, kind of sounds like a jerk thing to do. But later I realized it was so great. Is he's like, look, I will answer 3 questions about Back to the Future. 3, and I'm not gonna do it now. It'll be in
Right.
3 days. So you think about the 3 questions you need answered from Back to the
Right.
Future, so that they're the ones you want answered. And I'm happy to answer any 3, but there'll only be 3, and you have 3 days to come up with them. And I'm like, that's kind of perfect.
Yeah.
But I would, if someone gave me that kind of rule set, I would just lose my mind. Be like, oh no, what if I asked the wrong one? What do I really need to know?
Yeah.
But again, it's never lost on me. I couldn't imagine meeting some of those people, and you had the benefit of just starting at a time when sort of the old Hollywood people were still around, so you
Right.
could interact with those people.
Well, again, and like interviewing Cavett or
Yeah.
interviewing, Jane Fonda, which
Yeah.
I did recently. Tippi Hedren. I mean, these people are. I put them on such a pedestal. Again, they had these very. They also had a very, long career. I mean, Jane
Yeah.
Fonda was in so many movies that you could really watch the transition of Jane Fonda.
Right.
And that was interesting, and her personal life and her political life and everything. So it's like, as I grow up, she grew
Right.
up.
You go from Barbarella to On Golden Pond,
Right.
and it's such a weird transition.
Yeah, we watched Mary Tyler Moore grow and change, and Kel Burnett grow and change, and Alan Alda grow and change.
Is it Ordinary People that Mary Tyler Moore got nominated?
Oh, incredible.
I mean, that you would never think
No,
that
amazing.
she could do that. And
That's a movie that I saw in a theater, and then hadn't seen in a while. And if you see it on television, my God, it really holds up.
yeah, it's and again, weirdly for the time, a movie that was filled with TV people, because Judd
Yeah.
Hirsch and
Yeah.
all these people who were either contemporary or were considered sort of TV actors in this amazing movie. Is there a movie that you feel like that you had seen on TV as a kid or growing up that just is criminally underrated, that you're like, it's my mission to sort of expose people to this movie, or an actress or or a filmmaker or anything like that?
It's so hard. I actually have a few. The first one that I always think of, which I first saw on television, is A New Leaf. Elaine May's A New Leaf.
Okay, I've not seen that.
Very hard to see. There's some. I think she made it. She had some problems with the studio. It's apparently not her cut, but
Okay.
it's still brilliant. It's a very twisted love story. Walter Matthau loses all of his money, so he needs to marry a rich woman
Right.
in order to to live to the style that he's accustomed to, and he falls in love with Elaine May.
Had me at Walter Matthau.
Yeah. And they're, just sort of, and that was a movie that I discovered on television. Another one that I discovered on television right around the same time was a movie called Little Murders, which now seems like so prescient, about a guy who just starts, out of his window, starts shooting people. And they probably
Perfect.
don't show it on television for various, obvious reasons now.
Yeah.
But it's really, really kind of disturbing that,
It's always weird when you see, in the Twilight Zone was a good example, but there's a ton of it where you see someone who had tapped into almost like a futurism of like, I'm just going to extrapolate just this little bit of what I think the future will be like. And it's so scarily accurate when you see it in an old movie.
Yeah.
And, it freaks me out. Part of them I'm like, good job. But then I'm like, oh dear God.
Right. And then just as far as TV goes, then I don't know if they're underrated, but the old Bob Costas shows, and the old Dick Cavett shows, I think are the greatest insight into the personalities, the cultural personalities.
Those in-depth, multi-part interviews that's now kind of become the podcast world. But
right.
seeing on a major network 90 minutes of Dick Cavett talking to Phil Silvers
Right.
was amazing.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't believe I get to see
Katharine
that.
Hepburn.
Yeah.
These become the only things that there are books, but there they are in person,
Yeah.
and it's 90 minutes, and
Yeah.
you really get a snapshot of what that person was like. And again, they didn't do a sit down interview
Right.
ever,
Right.
but they did it with him. And so those to me are, I'm like we were saying before the broadcast, I'm watching, Get TV and
Yeah.
Antenna TV
Yeah.
to watch the old Johnny Carson shows, because there's something so calming about watching, Bob Hope come on. And,
Yeah. How you doing?
yeah.
Yeah.
You
But
know.
that was, and I say this about TV Guide all the time too, was those were made to be disposable. They were the most disposable of all the medias that we were exposed to.
Uh-huh.
But they end up being the absolute best snapshot and best historical document of the time, because it's not sort of curated at all.
Right.
It was just kind of, this is a literal snapshot of the time and place. And the talk shows especially, I lament the sort of loss of those kind of talk shows, because like even stuff like Dinah Shore,
Oh, yeah.
they'd have Gore Vidal on with Rip Taylor.
Yeah.
I mean, just be like this
that
weird
mixture.
mixture.
Well, that
you never
was,
get.
and I remember watching the Merv Griffin show, which was in Hollywood.
Right.
So you really got a sense of like, oh, well, that's what Hollywood's going to
Yeah.
be like. Pamela Mason's going to come by there, and Ava Gabor.
Just
and-
hanging out.
Yeah. He's just like, I could have a career like that. Just go on Merv Griffin and tell some funny stories.
Yeah.
Afterwards, they're going to go to Chasen's. You kind of get an idea
Right.
of everything that was, that was going on. Merv was so, colloquial with everybody.
Yeah. Everyone knows Merv. It's like
Yeah.
hanging out at his house.
Whereas like then Mike Douglas in Philadelphia, his thing was having the co-host for a week.
Right.
So again, you see somebody you really like I really liked Michael Keaton. I was
Right.
like, oh, he's going to be on Mike Douglas for a week. And Michael Keaton has to cook and
Right.
take part in this. And
You see them outside their comfort zone and being like
Yeah.
a person, which you almost never got
so
to
a
see.
doctor would come on and would talk about your love life, and he'd have to be involved
Right.
in that. So, again, that was like a kind of a fun, big deal too, if you'd really invest in your movie star.
Oh yeah, I mean, Michael Keaton is one of my absolute favorites, and I loved the Mary Tyler Moore Hour. Did you
Yeah.
ever see that? Where
Yes, we
he's
did.
the security guard or the PA, and it
Yeah.
was such a weird show that was, and I've talked about it on the show before, but it was a bit like Larry Sanders, where it
Yeah.
would be the behind the scenes and then the variety show. And I remember seeing him on that, and I read later that he worked on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood when he lived in Pittsburgh.
Wow.
It was like his first job. He was a PA on Mr. Rogers,
Oh, God.
which I cannot picture Michael
No.
Keaton working on Mr. Rogers.
No.
But again, not after hours.
Night Shift?
Night Shift.
Yeah.
That's a movie I caught on television, and I was like, this movie's incredible. And it was all people I knew from TV.
Right.
Like Shelley Long, even I think it was before Cheers. But the Fonzie's in it, and I was like, this is the greatest thing.
Well, we were talking about like Get TV, and they now show the Sonny and Cher show,
Yep.
and then the Cher show, and that hit such a resonant chord with me that I was at the age of watching Cher. Sonny and Cher, I don't remember as well as Cher,
Right.
And when I saw it the other night, and David Bowie was on, and she's doing like a mashup
Yeah.
of these corny love songs, but with David Bowie.
Yeah.
And they're both like rail thin and
Yeah.
probably just did coke right before,
It's the 70s.
But I was like, oh, this was such a part of my childhood.
Yeah.
Of like, you wanted to dress like David Bowie and look like Cher and have the wigs and the crazy clothing. And that was that nice junction, of music and hipness.
Oh yeah. I mean,
LA.
yeah.
Like that LA seemed, where all the music was happening.
It was so different from what New York. I would get SNL. You would see some great bands in there, and so many people talk about the Bowie appearance or seeing Devo on there, those kind of bands. But the thing I used to love about Fridays,
Right.
was that music aspect. The LA thing. It did seem a lot more like cutting edge or
Yeah.
strange.
Yeah, I definitely knew the idea that LA was the Smothers Brothers,
Right.
Sonny and Cher, that there was like a little bit of that hip factor. I didn't
Right.
know what it looked like,
Right.
but you definitely got that. And then whereas New York seemed like more theatrical.
Yeah, it was kind of more intellectual. Like, it
Yeah.
had that, like, I always think of, like, To Tell the Truth or What's My Line kind of
Right.
celebrity where they're like,
Sophisticated.
they're like, oh, what was there, when you first moved out here, was there, like, a place you had to go, or you were like,
Yeah, the first thing I did was I had to see the stars on the Hollywood
Yeah.
Walk of Fame, and I took a picture of me cleaning Joseph L. Mankiewicz's
Excellent.
star, which was filthy. And again, in my insane, crazy life, years later, I'm like working with Ben Mankiewicz on TCM, and
Yeah.
I met Joe Mankiewicz, and it's kind of strange. It was really strange, but I was obsessed with the star. I still am. I
Yeah.
still think that Grauman's Chinese Theater, and the Hollywood Walk of Fame are the two greatest Hollywood inventions.
It's
Amazing.
crazy.
Whoever thought of
Yeah.
that? Putting stars on the sidewalk, and I don't know why you get such a thrill. You're like, oh look,
I could put my hand in a place that they were. It just,
Yeah.
Or like Mary Pickford, her feet are so tiny.
Yeah.
How small was she?
I don't
Yeah.
know why I get such a kick out of that, but Peter Sellers is there, and you get like an aura of the.
It's a direct connection in a weird way. Even though you're not, in a movie you get more of a sense of them. But yeah, you knew there's proof they were there.
Yeah.
Which is
Well,
such
and
an odd
plus,
thing.
again, when we were kids, was it Leonard? I forgot. So I think it may have been Leonard Maltin. They had the show, and they would always start it with you'd see the newsreel. So I remember always seeing Marilyn Monroe, and Jane Russell, holding their hands. So you'd have certain images of people that did the handprint footprint thing, and as part of TCM, every year somebody gets a handprint footprint. And that is always like, I was there, it turns out that Jerry Lewis had never had, which was crazy.
That is odd.
Had never had, so I was part of that ceremony. But then Peter O'Toole, a couple of years before him, that was pretty crazy. And I took the towel that he wiped
his hands up.
that he swiped his hands on, because he did his hands, pressed them flat, and then they handed him a towel, but rather than just wipe it, he went like this on the towel. So of course I was I became a little 13-year-old. I've got to get that towel.
Yeah.
And I got the towel, and I remember at the time people were like, are you out of your mind? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And then later on they were like, why didn't I
Got the
think of that?
concrete towel. I wish that I had grabbed
So
that.
it's got his DNA on
Yeah,
it. I
this
could
is-
recreate him.
We can Jurassic Park Peter O'Toole. I would watch a movie that was Jurassic Park, but it was just killer Peter O'Toole's that were just stalking people in an amusement park. Be like Westworld a little bit. Is there, when you started working with TCM, was there a movie that you were like, they probably have access to this thing I want to see, or you were like, maybe I can hunt this down?
Well, we did a show called Second Looks, and I got to present A New Leaf, a movie that I loved quite a bit called The Loved One, a movie that was really a big part of my childhood, 1941. And a lot of these movies, sort of
The Spielberg movie?
came back in vogue.
Yeah.
Because 1941... Second Looks was about giving movies, a second look.
Yep.
And it was, I wish we could have done 100 films.
Oh,
because
yeah.
I had so many that were like that. Again, going back to a movie I saw on TV, Looker.
Yep.
She's a looker. But that was like a really good movie. Susan Day and Albert Finney were in that. And so 1941, I remember seeing as a kid and just over the moon loved the film.
Yeah, it's a crazy movie.
Loved it.
Yeah.
And in my mind, it was a big hit. And then as I grew up, I'm reading 1941 is a bomb. It's a bomb. It was a bomb. It actually wasn't a bomb. It did really well. It just didn't do as well as Jaws.
Which nothing could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, wait a minute, why does it keep saying like this?
Yeah.
And they don't show it anymore. And so, I was like, we have to show 1941 because I have to prove that this is a great film. And it was so much fun because it caused people they got re-excited about Nancy Allen and Tim Matheson, and people forgot how many amazing John Candy's in it.
The cast of that movie is amazing.
John Belushi and
Eddie Deason.
Yeah.
Donovan Scott's in it. I had Donovan Scott on the show, and that was his first movie.
Yeah.
And he was saying that he went in and they were it was just such a huge movie. They built everything for real, and they were flying a full-size plane, and he was just like, this is how all movies are.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that's not.
Well, and I had read, and then in my research for presenting it, I actually read something sort of interesting that Spielberg showed the movie to Stanley Kubrick, and Kubrick said to him, it's a great movie, but I think you should release it not as a comedy, but just as a movie.
Yeah.
And that's a very interesting insight, because
that's what sunk it, probably. People thought they were getting Animal House.
Yeah, maybe. I don't remember. I mean, I loved it as a kid. I loved it. It had singing and dancing. It had
action.
It had people that Belushi, all the people that I loved. It was like a winner for me. And that's a movie, as you're saying, like, does it not hold up? Luckily, I've had a lot of experiences where I was like, oh, I was a pretty intelligent kid. This really holds.
I had great taste.
I remember, have I really chosen this? Because I hope it holds up. But I really thought it did, and all the miniatures and, all the people. The music by John Williams is fantastic. There's a lot of, great things about that. But I'm trying to think of people. I mean, I nearly keeled over and died, like when I got to meet Tony Curtis.
Oh, I can imagine.
That was like crazy. That was like so things like that.
He strikes me as one of those people too, that there are certain actors and movie stars or politicians that have the thing that, like, you just are like, oh wait, there's a weird. Yeah. You have that, like, magnetism thing.
Right.
That you can't quite put your finger on. You're not just like a really good actor. Like, you just have a almost inhuman otherworldliness. Yeah. And Tony Curtis strikes me as someone who probably was like that, not knowing it.
Yeah. I mean, that was, so that was crazy. And having that experience of seeing, I mean, again, it was like literally an out-of-body experience to watch Cabaret on the big screen and meet, my idol, Liza Minnelli, when, Ben Mankiewicz taps me on the shoulder and says, Liza Minnelli wants to meet you. I was like, oh, you're funny.
Yeah, funny joke, everybody.
He's like, and he goes, no, she's right here. She said she wanted to meet you. And I'm like, oh, that's right. I'm in the movies too.
Yes, yeah.
I'm not like home in Connecticut watching movies. I've actually made it into the movie.
And you have to remind yourself of that all the time, or is it hard to?
Completely. Yeah. Because I was like, I'm going to have to go talk to Liza Minnelli and then, try to, again, form sentences of how much, her work has meant to me, especially in Cabaret, and I think she appreciated it. I tried to not, be over the top.
You try to say thank you, but not to gush.
Well, I mean, I think of her, I said just again, your work in movies, made me think that I could possibly have a career,
Right. And
Cabaret, Arthur, I mean, I remember Liza Minnelli and Arthur, seeing that as a kid. That's a movie I saw with my grandmother. It doesn't get better as a kid watching Arthur. Yeah. That's not only a kid's movie, but like I watched it. That's a movie I watched about a year ago on the big screen. And man, does it hold up. Yeah. It's fantastic.
And you feel a little bit like you're getting away with something as a kid because it feels a little bit like adults and you're,
We could never, I mean, the whole movie's like drunk and laughing.
Oh, yeah.
And, I was like, I don't think we can see a movie like this.
How odd is it that they made a sequel to that movie? I'm like, of all the, I know it did well. Yeah. But of all the movies, I could not imagine that Arthur 2 on the Rocks would be a thing. Like, that might be the weirdest sequel.
Moore was like, he was really, really, really popular.
Yeah, yeah. But that was, and I feel like they only made that because, like, Father Like Son was such a big hit.
Yeah. The other great experiences I've had have been as a group, like getting to see at the Cinerama Dome. This was like mid to late 90s. They re-released The Wild Bunch.
Wow.
So I'd never seen The Wild Bunch. Obviously, I'd seen pieces of it on television, horribly cut up. But a group of us went to see, and it was like, oh my God, the theater was packed. People were hooting and hollering. Yeah. It was a blast. And again, that's one of the things that LA has, I think, over New York, is that we still have that ability to go to the Cinematheque, or see a movie on a big screen and have the crowd just go nuts.
That communal aspect of watching things, which is interesting because I saw that fall away in the 90s and 2000s as you got a generation of people who grew up on video stores and they could just I just watch it at home, and midnight movies started to fall away. But it's interesting in the last maybe 5 years that's totally come up again, where now you have younger kids who are like, wait, it's way better.
Yeah.
Even though I can watch this whenever I want, it's so much better to watch it with a group of people. It's a completely different thing.
Yeah.
And that's one of the few things that I was like, oh, I think this generation will be okay. Like, it made me very happy.
I think that again, like, for that they need context. Again, that's one of the great things about TCM is that there's this context that you can. Yeah, we had that when we were kids.
Yeah.
These afternoon movies were sometimes introduced by people, and they would talk about the film, and so you get a little bit of, you weren't just watching it, cold.
Right. And that was the only place you could get information about. Like, I remember we had a show on WSBK TV 38, Boston, called the Movie Loft.
Yes.
And
I remember that show,
Dana
actually.
Hersey and the Movie Loft. When I worked there later as an adult, I heard so many amazing stories where Dana Hersey was this big man with a big voice, and he liked to drink, and he'd go into bars and just go, I'm Dana Hersey. Who wants to fight me? And he'd just like fight people. Because he was just this big, but they had a research team, and the only time you'd get like factoids about these movies would be in those introductions, because you couldn't look it up. And, I valued that stuff so much. And then there were books like the Psychotronic Movie Guide and the Cult Film Guide, but those are hard to find. And, so the context, you're right, is key to sort of enjoying all this stuff. And I feel bad when I hear someone complaining about maybe the times that a movie was made in, or like I don't want to say political correctness, but they'll just be like, oh, I could never watch that because of this thing in that movie.
Right.
I'm like, but that movie was made in 1960. Yeah. And it was actually, it's you can't necessarily watch it with, 21st century eyes exclusively.
Yeah.
And but more because you're missing out on, what was great about this movie, which is fantastic. Is there anything you watch now that's on, is there any TV show that you're just like veg out to, or you're like, I just need to relax? I throw this
House
thing
Hunters. I love House Hunters. I mean, I know other people that are obsessed with it because it's like some crazy couple that you're like, they're gonna get divorced, right? Like, because they
buy two houses.
They can't seem to agree on it. She wants open concept. He wants a man cave. It's like it's not gonna work out, Or House Hunters International, of course, is funny. So I have like friends, will like text each other like,
can you believe this guy?
And so we, those are my silly shows, or Chopped, shows like that, cooking channel,
all non-narrative stuff where you can just kind of do you find that when you watch things that are scripted, the sort of actor or director kicks in and you start to watch it more as like a technical person?
A little bit, but I have to watch so much for my research too, like if I'm interviewing people. So I'll have something hooked up to YouTube and I've been like watching their interviews that they've done. So it's like I start to use TV for work, and then I watch movies more as like relaxation. Right. I think that a television show, it's hard, unless you sort of binge watch it. Right. And I try to do that, watch 2 or 3 episodes. But I just don't find it as engaging as a film. And I'm just not sure what that is.
I mean, I think because I also find that, and it's not as satisfying, because the more popular a show is, the less they can actually conclude anything, because they want to go on forever. So you can't tell a satisfying story where, with a movie, at least you go, starts here and ends here. You might get a sequel later, but you've seen a whole story. And the thing that people get engaged with on a show is that it kind of never ends. Right. Which is sort of interesting, but at the same time is like so trying after a while. So I often will. I mean, there are certainly
shows that I think are just so admirable, like Veep, right? And that are very intelligent and very funny, and Bill Maher, of course, and they're. But it's almost like, I know it's a weird thing to say, but it's almost like it's too good. It's too stimulating to watch.
And you have other things you want to multitask.
I love
or something?
watching stuff like when I'm on a plane. Right. I'm like, 5 John Olivers in a row. Yeah. Fantastic.
Time flew by. It's fantastic. Yeah.
But it's like you're at home and I get too stimulated. Like, and I won't be able to sleep.
Right. Yeah.
So.
No, I've had that very many times.
But a movie is kind of like, it's okay. How did it ended? Okay.
Right. Is there one movie that's like your like, here needs to calm down. Let me put this one movie on that you always go to?
Again, I have a few. Sweet Smell of Success is a perfect film. It's perfect. It's unbelievably shot. The dialogue is, I've gone through waves of loving it more,
Right.
loving it more, then taking a break.
Right.
I need to see it again, and it just is so beautiful. Music, everything about it, the performance, the music, the lighting, New York in the 60s, it's got it all. I love All About Eve just because, again, Betty Davis and the language of that, I think is, just a beautiful movie. And then, of course, the musicals like The Bandwagon.
Right.
Is for me. It's just, again, a perfect... And of course, I love Singing in the Rain because now it seems so sad. But The Bandwagon for me is like one of my favorite movies about show business.
Right.
Because that whole, it's got Oscar Levant.
Right. It's everything you could ever want.
Fred Astaire. You sort of can't be upset singing to That's Entertainment.
I saw, when I was in school, they showed us Gold Diggers in 1933.
Yeah.
And I remember everybody hated it because, they're like, I love Quentin Tarantino movies. I'm going to film class. But for whatever reason, I loved that movie so much for kind of all those.
Yeah.
It's show business. And that is one of the movies that I'll constantly revisit. If I'm just like, this is
that the one that begins with Ginger Rogers? We're in the money?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the craziest.
Yeah. There's just insane.
If you watch it now, it's like, oh, they have no clothes on.
Yeah, And it's 1933.
Yeah.
There's no
Busby Berkeley was a fascinating... I had a book on Busby Berkeley when I was a kid that my grandfather got me because I became obsessed with Ruby Keeler.
Oh, yeah.
I really wanted to be Ruby Keeler. And then I got into Groucho Marx. Then I was like, I want to be Groucho Marx.
Who's the guy that he directed a bunch of cartoons and then he made Girl Can't Help It.
Oh, Frank Tashlin?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
who worked with Jerry Lewis.
Yes. That his stuff I could watch all day.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And it's so weird how he went from animation to that, but once you know that, you're like, oh yeah, that's obvious.
Yeah.
You see it. Yeah.
Well, I love all the Jerry Lewis, all the Martin and Lewis movies, But I love Jerry Lewis's, of course, The Nutty Professor.
Right.
Which doesn't seem to be, again, that was a movie that seemed to be playing all the time when I was a kid and does not seem to be playing.
I feel like because of the remake,
maybe
they just kind of pretend it doesn't exist anymore.
But again, the bright primary colors.
That 60s
I used to love
strip.
Cinderfella.
Oh, yeah.
And Ladies' Man.
Yep.
Those would play.
Have you ever seen The Love God, Don Knotts movie?
No, I don't know that one.
It's probably my favorite 60s comedy. It was with Nat Heinken, who did Phil Silver's show in Car 54.
Uh-huh.
It's so modern and funny. And the plot of it is that Don Knotts he inherits a Bird magazine from his father.
Uh-huh.
And this guy who has a Playboy type porn magazine loses his license to mail magazines.
Yeah.
So he convinces Don Knotts to let him take over this Bird magazine, which he makes into a Playboy magazine, but they build up Don Knotts as a Hugh Hefner.
Oh, how funny.
And it's so funny and weird.
Yeah.
And Anne, who was Honey West, and she's in Francis is in it, and it's so good, and it's such a funny movie, and it's so modern. It's that movie is one of those movies I could watch nonstop, but it's very very candy colored, cartoonish as well.
I find myself caught in years too, late 50s to early 60s seems to be my that's when I like the clothes,
right?
The Apartment.
Yep,
love The Apartment. I'm like, oh, I'll look on the thing and I'm like, oh, yeah, here we are again.
Yeah.
It's 1959.
Yep. I love this movie. Why? Oh, that's why. It's in that nice sweet spot. Well, thank you so much for doing this. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you. It's fun. I'll take my TV guides with me now.
Do it. Yeah. You can watch just one channel.
Brian Keith. What did I say when I got here?
Oh, you worked with him before, right? Didn't you say?
Brian Keith on his last film, it was called Rough Riders, John Milius movie.
Did John Milius? No, he didn't do the Big Red one. He did that was Sam Fuller, but he did Big Wednesday.
Yes,
I love that movie.
Yes,
yeah,
that was him.
Man.
Only 15 cents. All righty, thank you.
Perfect.
Thanks
You're welcome.
For having me.
You're welcome.
Oh, baby, I see you in my TV set, yeah, baby, I see you in my TV set. I cut your head off and put it in my TV set.
how great was she? She's fantastic, so smart, funny, knows so much about movies. I am completely floored. She puts me to shame with that stuff, but she is fantastic. Go to IlleanaDouglas.com and you can find all of the stuff she's working on, including her book, I Blame Dennis Hopper, which you must purchase. It's fantastic. I will also put links to all of that stuff on TVGuidanceCounselor.com if you go there, or you could just Google it. She's rather famous. It's pretty easy to find her stuff online. But if you want a one-stop shop, it's all up on TVGuidanceCounselor.com. You can also email me at tvguidancecounselor@gmail.com, and I love hearing from you guys. Please don't hesitate to email me, or you can email me at ken@icanread.com, icanread.com being my stand-up comedy page. If you enjoy me, which you may or may not have, but if you did, and you want to hear my stand-up or see if I'm doing any dates near you, you can go there for that. See if we're doing any live TV Guidance Counselor events, which we do occasionally do. You can also go there for that. Or you can go on our Facebook page. Just search TV Guidance Counselor, or you can tweet to me at TV Guidance. Again, love hearing from you guys, but even if I don't, I will still be here Wednesday, and we'll have a brand new edition. So hopefully we'll see you again next time for a brand new edition of TV Guidance Counselor.